of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. Not missiles, but microbes.
Hitler, just like Planned Parenthood, practiced and defended mass extermination, all in the name of racial purity, which is exactly what the founder of Planned Parenthood believed. Margaret Sanger believed deeply in eugenics. Check out this article from 1926 about Sanger's advocacy for birth control clinics. She said, "We want a world freer, happier, cleaner. We want a race of thoroughbreds." It shouldn't surprise you that Sanger established her first full-service clinic in Harlem in 1930. Well, why Harlem? Well, as the Washington Times explains, that's where a lot of the black people she often referred to as human weeds lived. Sanger described it as an experimental clinic established for the benefit of colored people. Well, for her, the word benefit really just meant elimination. And in her infamous letter to Clarence Gamble of Procter & Gamble, it was about the need to use the cover of ministers to set up these clinics. She wrote to him, "The most successful educational approach to their population is through a religious appeal. We don't want the word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it should occur to their more rebellious members."
Planned Parenthood is not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere today. It's not going anywhere tomorrow.
The word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea. We don't want the word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it should occur to their more rebellious members. Can you believe that was written?
Margaret Sanger was for forced sterilizations even after the Hitler experience. After World War II, people were so shocked by what Hitler did, both in gassing the handicapped and then gassing the Jews, and in hundreds of thousands of forced sterilizations, that eugenics became a bad word. But here we have Margaret Sanger in the 1950s still giving speeches advocating sterilization, still supporting forced sterilization, and lamenting that eugenics is now a bad word. So not only was Margaret Sanger for forced sterilization, she was still for it after many people ran away from it in the 1950s. Margaret Sanger was the founder of Planned Parenthood. What's often covered up today by Planned Parenthood and their supporters is that she was a raving eugenist, and she believed in human breeding and breeding out the unfit, and she most definitely was influenced by sort of the general Darwinian notion of selection, and that we were being overwhelmed by the unfit, and that we needed to stop that. And yes, Margaret Sanger did think she was helping the poor by promoting birth control, but if you actually read her writings, like The Pivot of Civilization and other writings, why was she so wrought up about it? It wasn't just because she was being compassionate to the poor, it's because she thought the poor and others were unfit, and that we need to stop them from breeding because they were going to overcome basically white, elite, I would say white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, except many of these people were just nominal Protestants. They were no longer really particularly religious believers. And so she, sort of the Nordic races, and so she was very much a eugenist and believed in breeding better human beings and stopping the lower classes from breeding, not just because she was being compassionate, because she thought they were unfit and inferior. And so we were destroying our society by allowing them to breed, allowing immigrants to breed. We were destroying our society, according to Margaret Sanger. Basically, the lower classes, immigrants, the poor, minorities, and again, anyone who, in Darwinian terms, would be considered evolutionary part of the lower races, or unfit because they don't match a certain sort of predetermined IQ test, even if they're given an IQ test in English when that's not their native language. I mean, those are the sorts of profiles of the people that she would support. But basically, the poor, those she thought were unfit mentally and otherwise. She basically thought those who didn't live up to her predetermined standard were like weeds.
When I was growing up, my parents were always involved in various volunteer things. My dad was head of Planned Parenthood.
The Population Council was created in 1952 by John D. Rockefeller III with funding from the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. On the surface, the Population Council would appear to be a nonprofit organization involved in biomedical and public health research. However, the views and directives of its leaders throughout the years would reveal a far more sinister plot, which without a doubt continues to this very day. The first council president appointed by Rockefeller was Frederick Osborn, who was also the head of the American Eugenics Society. Osborn, and his direct link to the American Eugenics Society, is indisputable proof that eugenics has been a guiding force for the Population Council from its inception. Eugenics sounds harmless enough, but let's delve deeper. Eugenics is a philosophy declaring man should intervene to alter human hereditary traits. So, how would eugenicists accomplish their goals of altering human hereditary traits? Tested eugenic methods include the following: selective human breeding, marriage restriction, forced racial segregation, forced sterilization, forced abortion, human experimentation, killing of institutionalized populations, killing of the so-called mentally defective, killing of the handicapped, infanticide, genocide, and the list goes on. If any of these eugenic methods sound familiar, they should, because eugenics is the exact same philosophy that Hitler subscribed to. At Hitler's behest, Dr. Mengele carried out live human experiments on thousands of unwilling patients to test his genetic theories. Before the end of the war, the Reich managed to sterilize hundreds of thousands of innocent victims and killed millions of so-called undesirables, citing eugenic principles as an excuse. The Rockefeller Foundation helped found the German eugenics program and even funded the program that Josef Mengele worked in before he went to Auschwitz. At the Nuremberg trials, Nazi eugenicists drew a parallel between American eugenic campaigns and their own, which were modeled on similar studies carried out by the California Eugenics Society. During the Holocaust itself, one leading American eugenicist exclaimed, "The Germans are beating us at our own game." And indeed, America was not exempt from the horrors of eugenics. By 1945, American eugenicists had sterilized over 45,000 mentally ill patients. And under eugenic legislation, the Supreme Court allowed Virginia to sterilize those it saw as unfit, and California forcibly sterilized more individuals than any other state. All in all, 64,000 known Americans were sterilized under the eugenics legislation, which was legal in many states up until 1963. Furthermore, eugenic principles were applied to a Virginia law forbidding interracial marriage until 1967. Canada's Eugenics Board allowed the forced sterilization of what it referred to as subhuman individuals up until 1972.